Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bleav in Bengal podcast. I'm your host, Solomon Wilcots. Today, I am flying solo, and I really want to have a heart-to-heart. Of course, this Bleav in Bengal podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. They are our presenting sponsor. But today, I wanted to have a heart-to-heart with Cincinnati Bengals fans and all of Bengals Nation to try to go through some of the more critical areas of where we are at as a football team and where we need to go in order to fulfill the mission of winning a Vince Lombardi trophy and in order to be competitive year over year and really playing for a national championship, not a national championship, but a Super Bowl, right? Think about the Cincinnati Bengals as Super Bowl champions. I think that would be the greatest gift for Cincinnati Bengals fans and for all of Cincinnati to be able to hoist the Vince Lombardi trophy and say that it's coming home. Paul Brown would be smiling from heaven. His legacy is deserving of that. He truly is, always will be. I don't want to say was. He always will be one of the great football minds the game has ever seen. And I think this team, which is the Cincinnati Bengals, it is the legacy of Paul Brown. And we, as Bengal fans, deserve better. So we all know that the Cincinnati Bengals finished the 2025 season underperforming with a 6-11 record. We are now in the middle of a 3-year drought of not making it to the postseason. That's right, 3 straight years of absent from the postseason with one of the league's best quarterbacks. And so we're going to cover some ground that not only addresses some of the current concerns, but should carve a pathway and how we can get to where we want to go as an organization and where we could drink from the victor's cup that is a Super Bowl champion. But first, let's get started by just talking about some of the Cincinnati Bengals, what I Bleav is their chief and most primary concerns this offseason. I really do Bleav that most people want to see that there's going to be some philosophical changes taking place with the organization. What do I mean by that? It's okay, in order to get different results, you're going to have to make some changes. And I don't mean fire a bunch of people. Anybody can do that. I think you see now this offseason, at least 10 teams have moved on from their head coach. We're going to have 10 new head coaches for 10 different teams going into the upcoming 2026 season. Only Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh decided to step down. All the other guys were relieved of their head coaching responsibilities. But when I talk about philosophical changes, we're talking about changes in processes that you as NFL fans don't get to see every day. These are processes in terms of what are they doing in player evaluation? How do they come to the conclusion of who to draft, who to sign in free agency, who's staying and who's going? What players in free agency do we keep and who do we move on from? If you think that the way that we've been doing it over the last few years is the way that we should continue to do it, then you're entitled to that opinion. I tend to disagree because I think the results that we've gotten has not brought about the desired outcomes that we're looking for. And what we're looking for is to be playing in the postseason, contending for a Super Bowl title. Not that you're going to win a Super Bowl every year, but you should be, with the team that we have, with the quarterback anyway, that we have, we should be putting a team around that quarterback to allow him to be the best that he could be. And we're going to explain how a quarterback cannot do it by himself. I don't care who you are. The quarterback cannot win games by himself. He can't win championships by himself. And I think the Cincinnati Bengals this offseason need to do what we call an internal audit. They need to do some self-evaluating to see what changes need to be made. But I think we can all agree that doing things the way that we've always done it, particularly over the last 3 to 4 years, is not going to get us the desired results of winning and competing and contending for a championship. There needs to be improvement in player evaluation. There needs to be improvement in drafting players, who to sign in free agency, and who to let go, right? Who to let go. Some players you got to let go. You can't keep every guy. You just can't. But you could have kept the Jesse Bates, right? You could have kept the DJ Reader. There are some other players maybe you should have moved on from. But let's talk about how the Bengals can keep the Super Bowl window open, or not keep it open. How can we reopen it? Think about this. After the 2022 season, where the Bengals had played in 2 straight AFC title games, 2021, go to a Super Bowl. 2022, you go back to the AFC title game. The Bengals have not been back to the playoffs since then. Missed it in 2023, missed it again in 2024, missed the playoffs in 2025, and so much that your quarterback was starting to have illusions and deja vu of Carson Palmer not wanting to continue playing for the organization because of whatever. It didn't feel like the team was going in the right direction. I'm having these feelings that we could be going down that road again. And if something isn't done and isn't done soon, then we could find ourselves back in that situation. So how do you reopen the Super Bowl window that somehow seems to be closed when you miss the playoffs 3 straight years? First of all, you need a team that has an identity. What is the identity of the Cincinnati Bengals? If I were to ask you, what is this team's identity right now? You know what you would tell me? Oh, they got a really good offense when they have Joe Burrow. They've got really good wide receivers in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and really good offense. And the offensive line did do better in 2025 than they did in any other year in terms of protecting the quarterback, generating the run game. Second half of the season, I thought Chase Brown and the running game was as good as any around the National Football League. And I think if you said that, you'd be right. So I think the improved areas is creating an identity on defense. What do we stand for on defense? Is this a defense that strikes fear in opponents? Is this a defense that has strong leadership, that really, when they speak, the entire locker room pays attention and says, okay, where's your Ray Lewis? Where's your Ed Reed? Where's your TJ Watt? Where's your Myles Garrett? I can name you other teams in the NFL and say, wow, that team has an identity. Those are the teams that are playing in the playoffs. Those are the teams that are playing in championship games in the AFC and NFC championship. But if I was to ask you, who are the players on our defense that strikes fear in the heart of the opponent, that commands respect around the National Football League? What would you say? Who are those guys? I would tell you that we're void of those guys. And guess what? They're coming out of the NFL draft every single year. Some of these players actually hit the market in free agency every single year, right? There's a player by the name of Kevin Byard who's playing for the Chicago Bears. He's on his 4th NFL team, or he's on his 3rd NFL team. He started in Tennessee, then he played for the Eagles, and now playing for the Chicago Bears. Led the league in interceptions for the 2nd time in his career. He was a 3rd-round pick out of Middle Tennessee. He was a 3rd-round pick. Puka Nacua was a 5th-round pick. My point is, these are players that are productive players. Puka Nacua led the league in receiving receptions this past year. He was a 5th-round pick out of BYU. Okay? So these are players that could have been drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm not here to excoriate Cincinnati Bengals for who they draft. I just want to talk about the concept of what you're looking for and how leadership is such a vital, important part of when you're trying to build a champion, when you're looking for difference makers. And that's what I believe the Cincinnati Bengals are lacking on the defensive side of the ball. I think we clearly have difference makers on offensive side of the ball. People who command respect, people whose production level is at the forefront of what you see across the landscape of the National Football League. But defensively, let's face it, those are the kind of players we're looking for. Do you know that the Cincinnati Bengals finished the 2025 season with the 24th ranked defense in pressure rate? That means applying pressure to the opposing defense. That's not playing at a championship level. Do you know that they finished 32nd, dead last in the NFL for pass plays allowed of 15 yards or more? That's right. They gave up the highest percentage of pass plays of 15 yards or more than any other defense in the NFL. Those are big plays in the passing game. They ranked 28th in the NFL on third downs. That means getting stops on third down, forcing the other team to punt the ball, and getting the ball back for our offense. We ranked 28th, near the bottom of the league. Our run defense, we ranked dead last at defending the run game. That's right, giving up 147 rush yards per game. These are numbers that are indiscriminate of personality. This is not my emotions. I'm not sharing with you my opinions right now of the defense. I'm sharing with you empirical data that tells you how we performed on defense, okay? We gave up the fourth most runs of 10 yards or more. Those are considered explosive run plays. We gave up well over 100 run plays of 10 yards or more on defense, the fourth most of any defense in the National Football League. And we finished the season with 160 plus missed tackles on defense. That's the fourth most of any defense in the NFL. So we were poor tacklers, which meant we gave up more runs of 10 yards or more, at least among the most in the National Football League. We gave up more pass plays of 15 yards or more than any other defense in the NFL. And we ranked near the bottom of the league in run defense and in putting pressure on the opposing quarterback. That tells you we don't have a real strong identity on defense. We lack intimidation and physicality on defense. And we need more players to help us ensure and improve in those areas. That's not my opinion. That is empirical data that even the coaches for the Cincinnati Bengals could not deny. And even if you're the one drafting and picking the players, you would say, oh, yeah, according to the data, we need to get better in those areas. Now, let's look at how we perform within our own division, because you have to be able to win your division just to even get to the playoffs or be a wild card team. But you got to perform well within your division just to be a perennial postseason team. How about this? Do you know that as we sit here today, of the four teams in the AFC North division, Cincinnati Bengals finished third in the division with a 6-11 record. Only one win more than the Cleveland Browns, who won 5 games. We won 6. And we split with the Cleveland Browns during the regular season series, and they don't even have a quarterback. We got Joe Burrow. They got nobody. And we split with the Cleveland Browns. So don't go around thinking that we're that much better than Cleveland, okay? But of the 4 teams in the AFC North division, the Cincinnati Bengals, we're fortunate. We're the only ones that's coming back with our head coach. Mike Tomlin is no more in Pittsburgh. John Harbaugh has been fired in Baltimore. Kevin Stefanski, after 6 seasons, has been fired with the Cleveland Browns. I'm going to give you more on those guys later. But did you know that of the coaches in those in our division, Zach Taylor is the only one coming back. He's going to come back for a 7th season. I agree with Zach Taylor being retained as the head coach of this football team, because you know what? He's also our play caller on offense. In fact, Zach Taylor is what's right with the Cincinnati Bengals. And I know some of you have been out there in social media saying, nope, we want a new head coach. Stop. I'm telling you right now, stop it. For one, he's the head coach that helped develop our quarterback, Joe Burrow. You might say, well, Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow. He's a great quarterback. He would have developed under anyone, and that's just not true. Young quarterbacks in the NFL do not develop themselves. Coaching matters in our league. And Zach Taylor has been really, really good at helping Joe Burrow to become the best player that he can be at the most important position in our league. Do you know, as our offensive play caller, Zach Taylor has been very good at helping Jamar Chase become the best player that he can become, to help T. Higgins become the best player that he can become. That's right. Zach Taylor's called plays. I've seen him do it that's beat Pat Mahomes, that's beat Andy Reid, that's been able to manage. When have we had a game where we said Zach Taylor has mismanaged the clock on offense? You can't say that about him because it's just not true. I can say that about a lot of other coaches I'm watching around the National Football League. Don't know when to kick a field goal, don't know when to go for it on fourth down, don't know how to manage red zone possessions. You can go across every metric when it comes to offense. And I'm telling you right now, Zach Taylor stacks up against some of the best play callers in our league. We have scored on offense. The Cincinnati Bengals, who have missed the playoffs, by the way, each of the last 3 years. You take the last 2 seasons, Cincinnati Bengals have scored 30 or more points in 16 games. That's nearly half the games played over the last 2 years. They've scored over 30 or more points. You know what? They've lost nearly half of them. They're 9-7 in those games. So the problem is not the Cincinnati Bengals offense. The problem is other areas of the football team, right? And I just gave you the data points on our defense and where we drastically need to improve. Whenever there's a problem, think players, not plays. Whenever there's a solution, think players, not plays. As my good friend Merrill Hodge says, that coaches have all the power and no control. A coach hasn't thrown one block. They never made one tackle, right? They never missed the tackle. That they put the players in a position to make plays. And then the players have to be the one to execute and to come through in those critical moments. And when it doesn't happen, you don't think change coach, you think change players. And that's why players have to take the responsibility, because they're compensated. When they produce at a high level, they're going to be paid at a high level. And when they produce at a low level, they're going to be paid at a low level, and then they're going to be replaced. But when they're producing, then we got to keep them. We got to keep them. And I Bleav that our coach was certainly worth keeping. Zach Taylor is a really good coach. I'm going to tell you this. Cincinnati Bengals, they finished 3rd place, 6-11 within our division. I already said that, 1 game above the Cleveland Browns. And look, Cincinnati Bengals did get off to a faster start last year. They started off 2-1. So you can't say, well, Zach Taylor's teams get off to a slow start. They got off to a 2-1 start. Joe Burrow only started the first 2 games, and they were 2-0, right? And they were 2-1 in the first 3 games to start the season. But then Joe Burrow would miss the next 9 games. Do you know the 9 games that Joe Burrow missed? The 9 games that he missed, the Bengals were 1-8. 1-8 in the 9 games that he missed. That's mind-boggling to me. That's mind-boggling. 1-8. Thanks to Joe Flacco. That's right. We were able to win a Monday night game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Remember that game? Scored over 30 points. We actually won it. Joe Burrow, in the 8 games that he started this past season, Cincinnati Bengals were 5-3. Now, I know you might say, well, we just got to keep Joe Burrow healthy and we'll win more games. You got to do more than that. You got to put a defense out on the field with Joe Burrow. You got to have complementary pieces. Quarterbacks cannot win by themselves. And I'm going to give you some numbers to prove it. How about this? Joe Burrow has started 77 games in the 6 seasons he's played with the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals have won roughly 55% of those games. He's played at a level that's here. The win-loss quotient is here, right? Right? He helped take us to a Super Bowl. Do you know the Cincinnati Bengals were 10-7 that year? 10-7. So they didn't win. They won 3 more games than they lost, but got hot in the playoffs and went to the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow, with him as the starter, they've won 55% of their games, 43 of the 77 games he started. But I'm going to give you 2 quarterbacks around the NFL who've won 3 MVPs. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Do you know their head coaches have just been fired? The quarterbacks playing at a high level wasn't enough to save the head coach's job. Do you know that Lamar Jackson's 8 seasons since he's come into the league, every last one of them played with John Harbaugh? Baltimore Ravens have won 71% of their games over the last 8 seasons. How many Super Bowls have they won? I'll tell you, none. How many Super Bowls have they attended? I'll tell you, none. So if the team has won 70% of its game with the quarterback winning 2 MVPs in that time frame, and they've gone to 0 Super Bowls, what does that tell you? Oh, we need more than a great quarterback, don't we? Because a great quarterback doesn't ensure you're going to win a championship. Ask the Baltimore Ravens. Ask John Harbaugh, who's now signing a new contract, 5-year, $100 million deal to become the head coach with the New York Football Giants. He won a Super Bowl, but he won it well before Lamar Jackson ever arrived. You know why he won a Super Bowl before Lamar Jackson arrived? He won it with Joe Flacco. You know why he won that Super Bowl? Oh, they had a defense. Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Rod Woodson. You may have heard of them. Hall of Fame players. Need defense, not just a good quarterback, but if you put a good defense around your quarterback, you too can win a Super Bowl, Cincinnati. Josh Allen, last year's MVP. Do you know in the 8 seasons, he was drafted in the same year with Lamar Jackson, higher. 7th overall pick, 2018, same year Lamar Jackson went to Baltimore. Josh Allen showed up in Buffalo. During the time in which he's been the starter, they've won 69% of the games when he has started, almost 70%. 71% for Lamar Jackson, 69% for Josh Allen. And he's an MVP award winner. You know how many Super Bowls they won in those 8 years with him playing so great? None. You know how many Super Bowl appearances? None. You know why? Got to be able to play defense. Quarterbacks need more help than any other player at any other position. And if you don't get the help, you are not winning championships. Why do you think Joe Burrow is saying, I'm starting to get concerned here? This isn't fun. I'm worried because he knows he can't do it all by himself, right? He needs help. Quarterbacks are the most reliant position. They rely on an offensive line. They rely on receivers. They rely on a good running game. They rely on defense to get takeaways and turnovers, to put them on a short field, to get stops in critical moments. Tom Brady will even tell you he didn't win 7 Super Bowls by himself. He remembers Malcolm Butler getting the game-winning interception against Seattle to help win a Super Bowl. He remembers when they came from behind to beat Atlanta in the Super Bowl, the defense kept getting one stop after another stop, forcing the team to punt one possession after another. That's how championships are won. And I'll conclude by saying this. Even Kevin Stefanski, who was a 2-time coach of the year, he helped the Cleveland Browns go to the Super Bowl. I take that back. Helped them go to the playoffs. Cleveland Browns, that's right, have gone to the playoffs at least twice in the last 6 seasons with Kevin Stefanski. Who's playing quarterback there? Nobody. They go to the playoffs with no quarterback. Zeke, they went to the playoffs twice in the last 6 years. You know how many times the Bengals have been to the playoffs in the last 6 years? Twice. With a great quarterback. I'm here to tell you guys, this thing is more than about who your quarterback is. You've got to think more big picture. Look at the 4 teams playing in the conference championship. Big time defense in Seattle. Big time defense in Denver. And the New England Patriots, do you know they rank top 5 in points allowed, in scoring drive percentage allowed? They are playing big time football. They rank top 5 in run defense. Oh, by the way, they can tackle. They went from a team that won 4 games a year ago to 14 games this year. The New England Patriots. More than about the quarterback, it's about playing great defense. So this year, I don't want to hear we need a defensive lineman, or we need a linebacker, or we need a corner, or we need a safety. You know what we need? A difference maker. That's what we need. We need a difference maker on defense at any of those positions, because we have needs at all of those positions on defense. As we go into the draft with the 10th overall pick in the 2026 draft, Cincinnati Bengals fans, here is the position you want to draft. Difference maker. Somebody to help Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins and company bring home a Vince Lombardi trophy. Thank you for joining us, everyone, on the Bleav in Bengal podcast presented by FanDuel. I hope you learned a lot because that's what we're going to be talking about the entire offseason, everyone. Join me again next week. We'll see you then.